When I was monitoring the submissions inbox at the list at HarperCollins that I worked on, I noticed a lot of things that made submissions stand out, but I also noticed a lot of patterns of things that made submissions very easy to reject, things that meant that these submissions weren't ready to have been submitted to begin with. On the other end of the spectrum, I see people going through edit after edit after edit and process after process after process to try to get their manuscripts ready for submission. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the things that you can do to make sure that your book is publishable before you send it off, and to make sure that it's ready for submission without overworking yourself. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sam. I'm a romance author based in the UK. Like I said, I used to work at HarperCollins and I'm now published by them. So there are 6 questions that you need to ask yourself to determine if your book is publishable before you send it off to agents or publishers, or before you self-publish if that's what you want to do. The first question is, have you gotten good feedback from beta readers? And I say beta readers, not just friends and family. What makes an effective beta reader? There's a couple of things. First of all, they need to be able to give honest feedback. So someone who's going to love it just because it came from your brain, they're not going to be capable of giving you honest feedback. Or it might be honest for them, but it certainly won't be objective. The other thing is they need to be able to offer constructive criticism. So rather than just saying, I don't like this, they need to be able to articulate why they didn't like something. If you're not sure, try sharing the initial chapter with a large number of people and getting some of their feedback, and you should be able to see who is going to offer the most valuable contributions to the process. Once you're getting good feedback from beta readers and they're saying, I think this is great, or they're only offering you feedback on small things, maybe things that you don't want to change, then you're ready to move on to the next question. Number 2, do you understand where your book sits in the market? Book publishing is a business, it's an industry, and it's super important that publishers are able to really clearly say, hey, readers of this other thing, you're also going to like this book. That's how they sell your book to readers. It's really important that agents be able to say to editors, hey, editors who publish this thing, you would also like this thing. That's how they sell your book to the publishers. And if you're self-publishing, it becomes even more important because you've got to do all of that marketing and all of that outreach and all of that positioning yourself. Now, you don't have to have all of the perfect words for it, but the most common way that this is done is through what are called comps, which are basically comparable titles. Your comps should be recent, and by recent, I mean definitely within the last 5 years, but preferably within the last 2 to 3 years, and they should be appropriate to your age group and genre. If you're not sure, if you can't figure out comps, talk to a local librarian or bookseller, and they should be able to help steer you in the right direction. If you can think of one comp, then maybe go on the Amazon page for that title and look at things that readers also liked or the books that it's being compared to. Typically with comps, you don't want to go too successful because citing a #1 bestseller is going to make you seem unrealistic and maybe delusional. Like if you say, I'm going to be the next Colleen Hoover, or I'm going to be the next Taylor Jenkins Reid, like that's showing a level of expectation for your writing career that might make agents and publishers nervous. Instead, what you want to do is you want to find comps that are recognizable, that sold well. Definitely they need to have sold well, because if they didn't sell well, then they're going to say, well, there's not a clear business case for this title. But you don't want them to be like, oh my god, the smash hit. Understanding where your book sits in the market is also about understanding the themes around it and being able to clearly and concisely communicate those. One thing that agents and publishers are always looking for is how easily communicated is this book? And that's why market positioning and comps are so important, because it really helps to concisely communicate the theme of your book, the genre of your book, the tone and feel of your book. It does show self-awareness. Just make sure that you're choosing comps that are known for those things. Question number 3, what is your hook? This is a super annoying phrase that agents and publishers love to pull out, but like, what does it actually mean? Essentially, your hook is your elevator pitch, and it's what's going to make your book stand out. When I was working the submissions inbox, it was super important for me to understand what the hook was, because when I would send it to my publisher, she would then ask me, what's this one about? And I would have 10 seconds to tell her what it was about before she said meh Or she said, okay, let me have a look. If you look at the genre that I publish in, for example, which is romance, people who read romance tend to read a really high volume of books. What is it about my book that's going to make them say at the end of the year, oh yeah, this was the one about this where this happened? So for me, it's like, oh, that was the one set in Santorini where that girl inherits her father's rundown summer house. And you'll see that reflected in the blurb, you'll see that reflected in sometimes like the title of the listing on Amazon. If you don't understand what your hook is, you are never going to be able to effectively communicate about your book to agents, publishers, or buyers. It's super important that you understand that. And if you don't understand what your hook is, ask your beta readers, ask those people that are giving you good feedback on your story. Beach Read by Emily Henry, which we all know is my favorite romance book. Rival authors, both suffering from writer's block, swap genres for the summer. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo would be aging Hollywood royalty finally tells her story for the first time. If your hook cannot be clearly communicated in very few words, then it's probably not strong enough and you need to spend more time figuring out how to articulate it. Or it may be that your book doesn't have a strong enough hook and you need to go back to the edits in terms of making sure that that hook and what it is that makes your story unique stands out more. Question number 4, do you know what you're looking for in an agent or publisher? This is especially true for agents because I feel like agents, there's a lot more variety in terms of what they bring to the table. Do you want someone who's going to take a finished piece of work and is going to sell it to a publisher and is going to really push for international rights and film rights and audio rights and things like that? Do you want someone who's just going to focus on the rights side of things because you're already published? Do you want someone who's going to offer a lot of editorial feedback? This is really important. Now, why is this necessary for making sure that your book is publishable? That's because it's really important for you to understand what is the next step in this process for me. If you want someone to just get your book on a shelf somewhere, if all you want is for them to take it and sell it and then for the publisher to publish it, then it's important that you have it in a condition that you're happy for that to happen. If you want a little bit more editorial support, I'm trusting that you have done your research before submitting to make sure that the agents and or publishers that you're submitting to are going to offer the level of editorial support that you want, and that's their style. Assuming that you have done that research, you can adapt the stage at which you submit your work based on that expectation. So for example, someone in my writing group was telling me a few weeks ago that she wants to submit something that's not finished, but she knows that that agent really likes to receive unfinished work because she likes to have conversations with the authors and say, here's the direction we should take this. Not many agents like that. Most agents want finished work, at least from first-time clients. But for this one in particular, that really worked with what she wanted because she wasn't sure what direction she wanted to take the story in. Number 5, do you know every detail about your book? And I don't mean about the story, I mean about the book as a product. Aside, have you ever watched Shark Tank or The Apprentice or something like that, and one of the super successful business people goes, oh, what was your turnover last year? And they're like, I think it was, and you're like, why don't you know your turnover when you know you're going to be standing in front of Mark Cuban?
Our web press releases.
I'm out. I am so
Thank
out.
God
I am
he's out.
so out. I am so out. It was a simple question.
Okay.
It's kind of like that when you're submitting. You need to make sure that you know and are communicating things like word count and genre and whether it's single POV or multi-POV. All of those details are important, and even if they don't all make it into the query letter, it's important that you know them for if someone wants to have a conversation with you about the book. If you don't know those details about your book, spend time making sure that you know all of those answers and that you're including the relevant ones in the query, because some of those things are details that are going to help agents and publishers decide if it's a good fit. And if you don't include the right things, or if you don't know the information when they go to have a conversation with you, it's going to look bad for you. And then number 6, have you run your manuscript through spelling and grammar check? Please tell me you have, but not just your manuscript, your query letter too. Please do not send anything to anyone without proofreading it and proofreading editing it again and running it through spelling and grammar check and running it through whatever AI software needs to tell you that you've used the wrong form of there, make sure that it's polished. And some agents will tell you they don't necessarily care about typos because they know that that would, in a manuscript, get fixed before publication. But like for some, it's just like, I receive so many query letters. Why would I give the time of day to the ones that haven't bothered to spell words correctly? That feels like a basic function of writing. So I would just be careful with that. I wouldn't want someone to count you out because of a silly little mistake that you could have prevented when your story deserves to be seen by those people. So those are the 6 questions. We'll go over them again. Number 1, have you gotten good feedback from beta readers? Number 2, do you understand where your book sits in the market? Number 3, what is your hook? Number 4, do you know what you're looking for in an agent and publisher? Number 5, do you know all the important little details about your book? And number 6, have you run your book through spell check? I'm not going to tell you what should and shouldn't go in your query letter. Maybe I'll do another video about that later on because I definitely saw a lot of them. But actually, I've got a really good resource for you about query letters, and that is the podcast, The Shit No One Tells You About Writing. It is so, so good. Every single episode, literary agents Carly Waters and Cece Lira go through multiple query letters and they critique them. They talk about whether they're too long, whether the comps are relevant, any details that needed to be omitted, the structure of them, all of that. And listening to that, you'll get a real sense for how people construct query letters, but also what are some of the things that are hard and fast rules versus just agent preferences. So I would definitely recommend that. I will leave a link to it in the description. It is one of the few podcasts that I listen to every single episode of without fail. You can also pay a small amount every month on Ko-fi to get access to the query letters that they're critiquing with all of their notes attached to them. So that's it. I hope that was helpful. I am thinking of doing a few more videos on what I learned from my time managing the submissions inbox, because I think I've got a lot of wisdom to offer to anyone who is looking to undergo the submissions process themselves, especially if you want to submit direct to publishers. So let me know in the comments if you've got any questions for me, and don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can see those videos when I put them out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.